Welcome to Elijah Streams with your host, Steve Schultz, president and founder of Elijah List Ministries. Stay tuned for another exciting show where you'll see the many ways God is interrupting your world, your nation, and your family to release His blessings and decisions on the earth. Watch today as another prophetic voice speaks to you with fresh revelation from heaven. And now, sit back and enjoy Elijah Streams.
Welcome to Elijah Streams. I'm your host, Steve Schultz. We're here with an amazing guest that we've enjoyed getting to know. He's the author of the New York Times best-selling book, which many of you are familiar with. I'm really amazed with the heart he carries and has shared with millions. Please welcome to our show again, Paul Young, author of The Shack. Hey,
honored to
Paul,
be here.
Glad to have you back. For some of you that are watching, you've watched the first show, and this is like part two. Paul, we're talking about The Shack and the movie. You said it was $100 million.
That's movie, a round figure, yes.
Which is a big movie.
It is a big movie.
It's a big movie. I saw it. I read the book. I saw the movie. I had just like Kleenexes, like the floor was full of Kleenex.
Me too.
It was just an amazing...
They did such a good job.
The actors were good.
Yeah.
And there was this thing where, now, God, I'll just throw this in real quick because there's a story with it. You said your mother had a hard time getting over the African-American depiction of God.
Well, she heard about
as a woman too.
She heard about the book from her hairdresser and her doctor before she couldn't even tell them I'm his mom because she wasn't sure, you know.
Well, you said she had a quote. She called up your sister.
After she tried to read it, and Papa came through the door as a large black African-American woman, God the Father. She just shut the book, called my sister, and said, "Your brother's a heretic," and she meant it. And
she was not kidding.
Yeah, and so there's this wild story about how she got unstuck from that.
How did she get unstuck?
Oh, so 1946, she goes into nurses training in Victoria, Jubilee Hospital, Victoria, British Columbia, and she is 18, single, wants to be a medical missionary, 3-year nurses training. And in 1946, you have, God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and doctors, And you never countermanded a doctor. That was a male profession. They wore white, so you knew they were holy. If they walked in a chart room, you stood up. If they step on a path, you step off. I mean, that whole environment. And she'd been in school for 3 months, and she just said she got her little cap, which she meant I looked cooler but didn't know anything. And in comes a woman into the hospital, and she's bleeding. And she's 6.5 months pregnant. Turns out to be Mrs. Munn, who is the senior pastor's wife from the Anglican Church.
Oh, wow.
And her chart shows that she had had 5 late second trimester, early third trimester miscarriages in a row. And in 1946, there's no NICU, there's no neonatal, there's, premature babies don't survive.
It's pretty elementary back then.
Yeah. So and state of the art for them, right?
Right.
And so the doctor rushes in, they examine her, and the doctor says, "I'm sorry, we're going to have to take the baby." He sets up an emergency C-section, grabs the head night nurse to assist, and a student nurse to assist and to learn and to do the cleanup. My mother is there when a 1-pound baby is delivered. Size of a stick of butter.
The 40s, 1940.
1946. 8:30 p.m., May the 30th, 1946. And the doctor hands this little baby to my mother and says, "It's not viable, dispose of it." Puts him in a kidney tray. And he goes back to finish the operation. My mother's looking at this little baby boy, and he's still breathing. And she doesn't know what to do. So she is praying as she goes out to the service area and comes up with a plan. She finds a washcloth, puts the baby in the washcloth, puts him back in the kidney tray, brings him back in the operating room, and puts him up on top of the sterilization room unit because it's the only warm place in the room. And her plan is, I'll just wait for the baby to die and then I'll obey the doctor. Meanwhile, the doctor meets with the parents and says, "I'm sorry, you had a son, but he wasn't viable." And so they're now grieving the loss of their 6th child. Doctor goes home, mother's sitting there. At 1:30 in the morning, finally says to herself, "I should probably tell somebody about this." Calls the head nurse. The head nurse says, "We are in so much trouble." Calls the doctor. He comes rushing in from home, rips into this insubordinate 18-year-old. Says, "You created this problem. You're now responsible for it, but don't you dare say anything to the parents." So she doesn't know what to do, takes the baby up to the nursery. They adopt him. Over the next 2 days, he loses 4 ounces. Drops,
Oh my goodness.
Because preemies drop weight.
Yeah.
And then he starts to pick up weight. The doctor realizes, I've got to tell the parents. Says, I'm sorry, I didn't want to give you any false hope. Your son truly wasn't viable when he was delivered, but due to the miracles of modern medicine, we've managed to keep him alive, but we don't expect him to live. So that afternoon, a Reverend Munn took his son in his hands and with the eyedropper baptized him, And 2 weeks later, Mrs. Munn goes home. 2 months later, little tiny Harold goes home to his parents in basically a shoebox. And 2 years later, my mother gets an invitation to his second birthday. They go, they see him running around. She says nothing. She goes to Central Canada, goes into Bible school, and then meets my dad. We end up going to New Guinea. She reads an obituary years later when I'm graduating high school, and it's a Bishop Munn who has passed away. Happens to be with an Anglican nurse. Did you know Bishop Munn? Yes, I knew him really well. Did he ever have any children? This one? One son, Harold. Do you know where he is? Lost track. Missionary teacher in West Africa, last I thought. She says nothing. Not for 10 more years. Reads the obituary of the doctor. And that's the first time that we even knew this story. She had not even told my dad. And now the doctor's dead. She tracks Harold down, finds he was the senior pastor in Victoria.
My goodness.
And they have a conversation, and she tells him the truth about his birth. They become friends and close. Harold becomes sort of part of the family. And then she calls him one day and says, I have this son who wrote this book, and I'm having a problem with it, and I'm not even going to tell you. And she says, well, he says, let me read it, and I'll tell you what I think. So he reads it, sends me an email, sends my mom an email, and says, I love this book.
Wow.
God is not more male than female.
Wow.
Historic theology has never allowed that, and imagery was never intended to define God, but to open up a window.
All this wisdom from this.
And this baby that my mother saved in 1946, decades later, becomes the man who's able to build the bridge that she can walk across to her own son.
That is an amazing story. I mean, you can't make that stuff up.
I know.
That's amazing. Well, we'll come back and do some more of this. Okay, we'll be right back.
Today, we're offering to you, our Elijah Streams viewer, a 2-book set from famous author William Paul Young that includes his life-changing novels The Shack, which was recently made into a motion picture, and Crossroads. Both of these fiction novels will have you amazed in tales from tragedy to triumph to help you live out your own life in freedom and victory. Many people have testified of how William Paul Young's books have changed their lives forever. Recording artist Michael W. Smith says, The Shack is the most absorbing work of fiction I've read in many years. Also in this momentous offer is William Paul Young's book, Crossroads, which reveals a traumatic story of a man who is bent on life and experienced a lot of damage from his past. You'll understand why sometimes it takes being at a crossroads in your life to bring transformation and realize the impact and the choices you must make. If you want to get a unique understanding about the impact and power of your choices and how your own tragedies can be made into a triumphant story of victory, you'll want to get this 2-book set from William Paul Young, which includes The Shack and his newer book called Crossroads. This 2-book set is all yours for a donation of $39. Shipping and handling included. Ask for offer number 1029. To order by phone, call the toll-free number listed here, or to order online, go to the link on your screen. Or you can send your check to Elijah Streams, 528 Ellsworth Street Southwest, Albany, Oregon 97321. Please specify offer number 1029, or log on to Elijah Streams at elijahstreams.com. Call or write today.
Hey, we're back. We're with the Elijah Streams, and we're talking with Paul Young. Paul, that was an amazing story.
You know what? God is a redeeming genius at work inside the details of our lives.
He must have had fun developing that story, knowing what he was going to do so many years later.
I know, but I think we're surrounded by these stories.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. They just need to be told. I want to hear the story about how you got from everything we've been talking about, both programs, to your understanding of grace. So when did you begin to pen this story of the Shack, and why?
Okay, so I've always written, but like anybody, you write stuff and you give it to your friends, poetry and songs and short stories. And I'd done that over the course of my life, and I started to give those things as gifts. And Kim is the one who, 3 or 4 years before the end of our 11-year journey, she started to say, you know, someday I want you to write something as a gift for our kids that puts in one place how you think, because you think outside the box. Later, she tells me when the book's published, she says, I was thinking 4 to 6 pages. But she says, put something in one place. And I didn't feel healthy enough until the year I turned 50, which was after the 11-year dismantling and rebuilding journey. And so it's like, so how do I do this? And I was working 3 jobs. I was taking the MAX train from Gresham downtown Portland, and I had 40 minutes each way. And it was a year that we had nothing. Literally, we had lost everything the year before. And that was part of the healing journey, because my 11 years dealt with certain fears, and it just got deeper and deeper. And one of the last ones was the fear of financial insecurity. And there's nothing like losing everything to help you deal with the fear of financial insecurity. Yeah. So I had nothing to give them for Christmas, and I felt the healthiest I'd ever been. So I thought, all right, I'm ready to do this. But I wanted story, because every human being is a story, and we have an affinity for story, and my kids love story, so I wanted to write a story. So I start writing a story, and from day one, I wanted the guy to be in trouble to be a white guy, you know, a little middle-aged, balding, short, little overweight white guy. Me, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted a perspective of the character and nature of God to be outside of that box. Because, you know, the only time you'll find God in a box is because he wants to be where we are. So I start writing.
So it couldn't just be a regular,
no.
What we would have said, a white guy. And,
no,
you know.
I'm trying to get as far away from Gandalf with a bad attitude God as I can get.
On purpose,
you know, because I don't want my children growing up with the God that I did. That God didn't heal one thing in my life.
It's true.
Right? And so I'd watched the character of God, which is so much more available, wrapped in the persona of a large black African-American woman. And I built
Papa.
who I call Papa, to mix the metaphors,
Yeah.
right? And I built that persona partly off of a woman here who was here in Portland. She's now graduated to the great cloud of witnesses, but Renee Greenwich.
Wow.
And,
so you actually had a person in mind that was playing that.
I built the persona partly from her.
That's really good.
I wove this story. I gave it to my kids for Christmas. You know, you give your kids a book, it's like, thanks, Dad. We'll be right on that. So it took them a while, but I had made 15 copies at Office Depot in Gresham, and those 15 copies did everything I ever wanted that book to do.
You were done.
I was done. I went back to work. I gave the extra copies to my friends, 6 to the kids, and Kim got a copy. I kept one, and the extras. And my friends started giving it away. And that's what started the chain reaction.
You had no intention of writing
no intention.
a bestseller?
It wasn't on a bucket list, wasn't a dream, wasn't a vision, wasn't a word from God. It was, you know, and I think I had 2 prayers left by this time. One was, I don't want to be an old man looking at my life and wondering, what would it have been like to take the risk of trust? I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And my other prayer is, I'm never going to ask you again to bless anything that I do. I'm a performance-oriented Christian missionary preacher's kid, right? And my whole life I've been trying to get God to follow me, right? Hey, I've got this great idea for me. It's for you, really. It's for the kingdom of God. Come on, follow me. And God always went with me, but he just refused to do anything.
Can you state that, what you just said? Are you saying this was a good thing or a bad thing to not ask God to bless?
Oh, it's a great thing, because the second half of the prayer is, but if you have something you're blessing and it would be okay for me to be a part of that, I'd be all over it. I'm just not going to ask you to follow me anymore. And so if you need someone to hold the door open or to clean toilets, which was one of my 3 jobs, then I'm in. I just want to know at the end of the day, you did this. And in retrospect, it's almost, because I'm writing the shack on the train at the same time I'm praying these prayers, right?
Wow.
And it's almost like God says, well, Paul, you know, this little story you're writing over here for your kids, what if I bless that? I mean, you give it to your kids.
And you're not hearing that at right time.
You give it to your kids, and then I'll give it to mine.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
And it's not like you heard that as you were writing it.
No.
You just begin to look back and say, it's as if God was saying, watch me now.
That's exactly what
Watch me
happened.
now.
Yeah.
Watch me now.
Yeah.
But we have one more segment. This goes so fast. But listen, right now it's time for another Elijah Stream's favorite, Prophecy Decoders with Sunil Isaac. Watch now as Sunil shows you how some recent prophecies are coming true. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Prophecy Decoders. I'm Sunil Isaac. Surely the Lord God does nothing unless he reveals his plans or his secrets to his servants, the prophets. God is still revealing his secrets today to prophetic voices, and I want to illustrate this by revisiting a prophetic word given on December of 2018 by Charlie Shamp. Specifically, we call it the Raise Your Prophetic Prayer Shield, Points of Prayer for 2019 to 2021. It was released on December 14, 2018, and we published it on the Elijah List on January 1st, 2019. Multiple prayer points that Charlie included in his prophetic word, including, I heard the Lord say, Boston, you are a city of winners, victors, and champions. And we saw that fulfilled in 2019 when the New England Patriots became Super Bowl champs. He also prophesied about Venezuela. Protests greatly intensify and violent riots grow with thousands of Caracas, Venezuela against the government in 2019. Have we not seen this take place in 2019? Protests, riots on the streets of Venezuela. Other topics that he referred to were the economy, the stock market, earthquakes, natural disasters, nations of the earth. And I want to pause here by talking about how we can look at prophecy. And when multiple prophetic puzzle pieces are given, sometimes they don't connect right away, but at the right time, the right alignment of events comes into play, and then suddenly the puzzle pieces connect. And we are seeing this take place in this prophetic word that has so many clues given. Now I want to talk about another topic that Charlie Shamp referred to in his prophetic word from December 2018, and that is Julian Assange. And he had this to say, Julian Assange leaves the Ecuador embassy, persecution and prosecution. And we saw this prophetic word unfold in the news. Associated Press, April 11, 2019, WikiLeaks Assange hauled from embassy faces U.S. charge. The British police hauled a bearded and shouting Julian Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy, where he was holed up for nearly 7 years. Another article from the USA Today, May 13, 2019, Sweden prosecutors reopened Julian Assange rape probe, seek extradition. A month after he was forcibly removed from the Ecuadorian embassy in London and after a U.S. extradition request over computer hacking charges, prosecutors in Sweden reopened a rape case against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. I want to pause here. What does Julian Assange have to do with the kingdom? Or why would the Spirit of God actually specifically point out Julian Assange and him being holed up in the embassy? I actually don't know the answer to that question. But I know one thing. When God takes the time to reveal something to us, and takes the time to reveal something specifically about Julian Assange, we have to pay attention, because when God reveals something, it's important to him. Therefore, it must be important to us. And I have scripture to back this up. Deuteronomy 29:29 says, the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but those things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever. So if God is revealing something to us, anything to us in advance, we need to take hold of it because it's a blessing to us and it belongs to us because he took the time to reveal it to us. Not only to us, but it has something to do with our children forever. God is still revealing the future today to us, and we can lay hold of it and lay hold to the blessing that's in that prophetic word. Thank you for watching.
Today, we're offering to you, our Elijah Streams viewer, a 2-book set from famous author William Paul Young that includes his life-changing novels The Shack, which was recently made into a motion picture, and Crossroads. Both of these fiction novels will have you amazed in tales from tragedy to triumph to help you live out your own life in freedom and victory. Many people have testified of how William Paul Young's books have changed their lives forever. Recording artist Michael W. Smith says, The Shack is the most absorbing work of fiction I've read in many years. Also in this momentous offer is William Paul Young's book, Crossroads, which reveals a traumatic story of a man who is bent on life and experienced a lot of damage from his past. You'll understand why sometimes it takes being at a crossroads in your life to bring transformation and realize the impact and the choices you must make. If you want to get a unique understanding about the impact and power of your choices and how your own tragedies can be made into a triumphant story of victory, you'll want to get this 2-book set from William Paul Young, which includes The Shack and his newer book called Crossroads. This 2-book set is all yours for a donation of $39. Shipping and handling included. Ask for offer number 1029. To order by phone, call the toll-free number listed here, or to order online, go to the link on your screen. Or you can send your check to Elijah Streams, 528 Ellsworth Street Southwest, Albany, Oregon 97321. Please specify offer number 1029 or log on to Elijah Streams at elijahstreams.com. Call or write today.
Hey, we're back, and thank you, Sunil. I hope you enjoyed this week's segment of Prophecy Decoders. It's always amazing to see how God's voice is still active on the earth today. Well, Paul, this time goes so fast, and I want to hear this story about on the set of the making of the movie The Shack. You've got a story to tell us.
Well, there's a bunch of stories, and I never anticipated being involved in the movie, but Lionsgate called and said, actually they called and said, would you look at the script? Gil Netter did that, and then they said, would you come on the first day shoot and pray a blessing over the entire cast and crew, which was really cool. But then they also called me back 60 days later. It was being shot in British Columbia. And they said, we loved having you. Would you come back for another day? We'll fly you up Wednesday. And I look at my calendar, it's all set. I'm sitting at my desk and I'm going like, there's a guy that I've been trying to meet face to face. We'd had a lot of interaction on email and stuff. His name's Brad Jerzak. He's a PhD theologian that lives in Abbotsford, which is right next door to Chilliwack, where I'm going to spend the night. So I write an email to him and I say, this is what I'm doing, and I explain it. Instantly I get an email back. Can I pick you up at the airport?
Whoa.
Well, I'm going like, yeah. He said, we'll have lunch together, we'll talk theology all afternoon, then we'll have supper with his wife Eden, and then I'll drop you at the hotel and you go about your business. And I said, great. All set. So about 30 seconds later, I get a second email, but this one has a photo attached to it. And that's Brad over here. Okay. And he's saying, I want you to meet my friend Dwight, Dwight Martin. And he said, while you and I were emailing, I was up near Cultus Lake, and Dwight and his wife Lori Martin have a little summer cottage up at Cultus Lake. And we were just walking in the woods, and at the same time you and I were emailing, look what we ran into. And that big yellow fluorescent arrow means in British Columbia, set location, movie location. He didn't even know, but 2.5 blocks from their summer cottage, they were filming some of The Shack, and they ran into it.
You can't make this stuff
up. It gets crazier. So then he said, if there's any time that you're up here, even for 10 minutes, if you could meet with Dwight and Lori, because Dwight's the first person who gave me my copy, that's what he said. And he said, but 3 years ago, the youngest of their children took her own life in the middle of the woods and gave her life back to God. And they're stuck. Lori is just furious because her daughter is dead. And Dwight believes if he could read The Shack again, he could get unstuck, but he hasn't been able to make it past chapter 1.
Oh, because that's where the pain.
Yeah. So they are stuck, and Lori's just furious. And she's a spiritual formations director. Dwight's a business guy. I said, we'll figure it out. So, but I don't even know what site location in British Columbia I'm going to. Well, I get the call sheet that night, and Brad meets me, and we have lunch, and incredible day together. But I get the call sheet, and it says, we'll pick you up at 9:30 tomorrow. We're taking you to the site location at Cultus Lake. This one, right?
Right next to his...
Right, 2.5 blocks away from where they are, where they're spending these days. So I get up there, and I'm texting Brad like, I'm 2.5 blocks away. He said, we have food. Anytime you can take a break, we'll meet you down the waterfront. So I walk over to Gil and Lonnie Netter, the producers, and to the director, Stuart Hazeldine, explain the situation and say, would there be any possibility that my 4 friends could come on set for the day? And they said, not only absolutely, they welcomed them with open arms. So 20 minutes later, these 4 come on set. I still don't know what we're shooting, but one of the reasons they wanted me there was that they'd built the shack. So when you see the shack in the movie, that's the set at Cultus Lake. Well, they had 5 chairs for us with 5 headphones right in front of the monitors so that we could watch, shoot one scene all morning, have lunch, one scene all afternoon, multiple times, right?
Wow.
Because they're getting different versions and all that. We still don't know what we're going to watch. So we are now sitting there watching. And it's the scene in the movie where Mackenzie comes out on the porch after having nightmares all night long. Papa's singing a Neil Young song, "Only Love Can Break Your Heart," you know. And you like Neil Young? Well, he's okay. I'm especially fond of him. You know, that whole conversation begins. You can see all of his pain and all of his turmoil, all of his rage just buried underneath. And she finally says to him in the conversation, "You know what the flaw in your life is, Mackenzie? You don't believe that I'm good. I am. And I'm at work in everything you consider to be a mess for your good. But until you believe that I'm good, you're never going to be able to trust me." And he looks at her with all this fury and he says, "Why would I ever trust you? My daughter is dead. And there's nothing you can do to change that." And he gets up, smashes the cup off the table and walks off. And we're watching this. And I look over at Dwight and Lori and they're in shock because what we're watching sits right smack in the middle of their world.
And right next
and then
door
they
to them.
reset and we watch it again. Reset and we watch it again. But the 4th time, Lori gets up, walks out, I go out and just hold on to her while she completely falls apart. And so here, and then we break for lunch. Octavia Spencer comes over, you know, God the Father and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and they all love on them. And then that afternoon, we watch a scene. See that little bird, Mackenzie? Pain is a way of clipping your wings so that you forget you were ever created to fly. Why did you bring me here? Because here's where you're stuck. And that night, as we're saying goodbye, they're hugging on me going like, "You have no idea." And I'm saying like, "I don't." But think about this. A movie gets made. Lionsgate decides to invite me back. And not only anywhere, to this set on this day. And I get a nudge to contact my friend Brad. And oh, by the way, he's walking in the woods and runs into the set. And I get up there and all of a sudden this whole weaving starts to happen. And this is the scene? How can I ever trust you again? My daughter is dead?
And you play it over and over.
And it unstuck them. We've now had 2 gatherings with Brad and Lori Martin and I, and called the Grand Embrace from the hug that I gave her. And but again, a God who is good all the time, involved in the details of our lives, without coercion, without force. The kindness of God that leads us to transformation.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much.
You're
I know people are going to be changed and transformed, and people are going to get unstuck. And I really want to encourage you to get this book or watch this movie or do both like I have and so many have. And like that scene, read some of those pages over and over until you get unstuck. This is just amazing. Well, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed these encounters and the amazing stories that Paul shared with us. And I know they touched you deeply as they did me. Please join us again for another exciting episode of Elijah Streams. Bye-bye.